Welcome to the Winner's Playbook with Steve and Josh. Disclaimer: the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.
So guys, welcome back to the Winner's Playbook. I'm Josh Lee and I'm here with actually a special guest today, not my usual partner in crime, Steve Sloan. I've got Jess Spendlove, and Jess is actually a performance dietitian, does a lot of different things here, holistic high performance coach and a highly sought after speaker specializing in nutrition and high performance. And she's got a vast amount of experience working with a range of different people in different fields, from CEOs to elite athletes. She's also got her own podcast as well, which is Stay at the Top, which is all about how you can harness the power of nutrition, sleep, mindset, and other high performance habits to achieve your goals, gain more energy, and reach the top, and ultimately stay there. And this is an area that I am super passionate about in my own life. Like, I'm really big into my fitness and mindset and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast. So Jess, welcome to the Winner's Playbook, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Josh, thanks for having me and for the intro. And Steve, I hope I do a good job of filling your shoes.
all good, Jess. But how's your week been before we kick off things? How's the week been for you?
Yeah, really good. Super productive, which is how we like it.
Yep.
A bit more behind the scenes this week, getting things done, which is great to carve out that time, which is otherwise spent seeing clients or speaking, which is what I love to do.
Yeah, it's always that's the thing I always struggle with, is that balancing act between client business work and actually working on the business rather than working on the clients, and that balance is always a tough one. But I don't want to waste any time, because there's probably so much that we could talk about in this space, and it's going to be quite hard to actually jam it into just one podcast here. But how about you just, if you can, for the listeners, just a little bit about your journey and work as a performance dietitian and high performance coach. Like, just give us a bit of an idea of the journey and what exactly does your day-to-day look like there?
Yeah, the catalyst honestly began 25 years ago. So I was a really good swimmer in primary and high school. Like, the school swimming carnivals, they actually go on to different things, school nationals. And I was doing that and winning them, and really great, thriving at a really young age. And I guess the catalyst was I then started to get it wrong. I became a really underfueled athlete, which I didn't know at the time. I just started getting sick and injured and performance plateauing and feeling really like average at school. And we were kind of like, what's going on? And through investigation, it was just found by pure like lack of knowledge and understanding what was required for me to fuel sport life and puberty. I saw a sports dietitian, and that really then the penny dropped. Like, I love food, I love people. Food is so powerful in helping you live and perform at your best. And then really the trajectory was like set from there. Initially the vision was very much elite athletes, and I feel really fortunate to have had such amazing experiences. I've pretty much spent the last decade entrenched in every professional sporting code there is, except cricket. Nothing against cricket, just didn't happen. But AFL, NRL, netball, rugby union, rugby league, soccer, basketball, all of it. And it was great, but I gave my life to it. And, I guess as this kind of went on, I realized what is next for me as a person, not just as a professional. And, it was my early 30s, and I felt like I'd basically achieved everything I'd set out to. And looking ahead, it was either go internationally and continue to do the same thing, work 7 days a week, games are on weekend, stay in that kind of cycle, or look to take the knowledge that you've learned and transfer it into other high stakes environments and arenas, which is what I love doing now, taking those principles and those lessons that I've taught and refined over working with over 1,000 elite athletes and helping business owners, business leaders, high performing teams benefit from that. So that's a really short, succinct look at 25 years.
Yeah.
And my day-to-day now is a mix of coaching clients, speaking or conducting workshops, and creating content, sharing that knowledge, and trying to grow and scale my business. So that's what
Yeah.
it all looks like now.
Amazing. And so you sort of stumbled upon and found what you wanted to do for the rest of your life quite early on by the sounds of it. So you didn't really bounce around any other sort of career paths or fields. You sounds like you kind of stumbled upon that in your high school years and you haven't really looked back. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, initially I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a physio or, an exercise physiologist. I guess for me, I was sporty, I was good at science and maths, and it was kind of like looking at where that all kind of landed. I
Mm.
think there was like a very brief moment I thought, oh, maybe an accountant because I was really good at maths.
There you go.
Um, when I applied to go to university, I actually applied for both dietetics first, though,
Yep.
which was a higher mark to get into. And I thought, whatever will be, will be. So, yeah, look, I'm not going to say there hasn't been points in time where I've thought, have I made the right decision? Because to be honest, I think when it comes to being a dietitian, there is a pretty narrow path you can take. And I have a really, I think, interesting skill set, which I think could lean itself into other industries. But, ultimately, I come back to the fact that I live this stuff, I breathe this stuff. I
Yep.
can help so many people. And yeah, pretty happy to have followed my passion, done
Yeah.
the hard work. And, it hasn't just happened, I've made it happen. But I think that's for anyone. You do the hard yards and you stay laser focused and you be consistent, and eventually whatever it is you're chasing happens.
Did you have any like influence from parents or anyone around you that had worked in a similar field or done a similar thing in life, or it's something that you truly were just drawn to yourself?
Yeah, no one in my family, no one in my immediate, as in like my parents have been to university or anything like that. The inspiration was really that sports dietitian that I went to see. And this is where I feel like it was really meant to be, because in my last semester of university, we had to do a research project, and there was an opportunity to do the research project with this person. And you know 15, 17 years earlier, she was the reason I wanted to do that. And then there was this opportunity to really like entrench myself, and have her take me under her wing. So there was this one person who was really the inspiration and the catalyst. And yeah, it was really just from my own desire and dedication.
Yeah, no, it's awesome because it's obviously something that I think it's probably not talked about enough is, high school kids finishing high school are, kind of expected to know what they want to do for the rest of their life when they, kind of just really starting off in their journey and don't really know much. And for one, I've sort of spoken about my journey on some of the podcasts before, and I bounced around a lot when I was in my teens, and I had no idea. Like I thought I was going to be a UFC fighter at one point in time, and then got into business and things like that. But it's quite interesting, and it sounds like maybe in another life you could have been a financial advisor because you nearly became an accountant, you said as well, which is quite interesting. But if we start then talking about the vast amount of athletes and then leaders that you've then been speaking with or you've done work with over the years, what actually makes a high performer? And then to that is, I suppose, what are some of the common traits that you see that those, in whatever field, what do they have in common?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, high performance or being a high performer is purely a mindset,
Mm.
and it's purely someone who's motivated, driven, they are growth orientated, and this kind of leads itself into all or most aspects of their life. Um, it's interesting that I had a call with a neurosurgeon the other day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not sure that I'm high achieving." And I was like,
Mm.
"I'm pretty sure you're the definition of high achieving." And I think it's an interesting term that people can either really gravitate to or even slightly repel them. So I think, yeah, for me, it really is a mindset. And in terms of the traits, definitely being like that growth orientated, growth mindset. Also, someone who's quite resilient. It's not
Yeah.
things always go their way. It might look that way, but that's because when they fall down, they get back up
Yeah.
and they keep pushing. And it really is just that like dedication and commitment to evolving and as I said, growing as a person on all levels.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the common traits that I see.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part of it, because then there's the high performance, but then in, I suppose, which area of life are you measuring that in? And I always talk about it a lot in terms of, okay, in the business and what I'm doing as a financial advisor, like, okay, maybe I feel like I am performing highly, or, I've got high performance in that section of my life. But then naturally, if I'm going so hard in one respect of my life, then maybe there's other parts of my life that I could be neglecting. And then there's the whole health part of it, of which I'm really super disciplined there. So I'm fortunate in that I think I developed habits really early on to ingrain that into me, so I don't neglect my health. But then there's the whole work-life balance, and if you're dedicating so much time into maybe sport or your business or your career, then you can kind of be neglecting in other areas. And do you ever see then anyone that is kind of high performing in all the different realms of the career or the business, but then also the family life and health? Or are they typically they're all at sort of different rungs, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and this is where it really comes down to the individual. And it for me, it doesn't mean you have to be excelling 9, 10 out of 10, happy with every single area of your life. I think if you're
Yeah.
aiming for that, you are potentially setting yourself up for failure. I mean, it's not to say I haven't seen it. I definitely have, but again, these are people who have embedded behaviors, habits, systems, processes. They've got team, they've outsourced things, and it's really coming back to them on what matters. And, you know, I really like the idea of looking at it nearly like a barbecue, like all the Bunsen burners, and we don't have them all necessarily on at the same volume and the same heat every
Mm,
single time. And, there are seasons for different things. So,
mm,
there definitely can be a shadow side of being a high performer. And I have walked in those shoes, which probably is the catalyst for the work that I now do, which is a little bit broader. And it's looking at that sustainable high performance piece in general, because I did let my dedication, motivation, commitment, drive, and complete commitment to my career overshadow a lot of other areas of my life. So I think
yeah.
that is a really important conversation to have, because a true high performance is having whatever that balance looks like in your life. And it's really about going, what's important to me? Where does it sit? And how
Yep.
can I make sure I'm ticking those buckets or boxes? And I believe when you do that, that is how it becomes more sustainable, because there is that
Mm.
enjoyment factor.
I think that's a great analogy with the barbecue. I haven't heard that one before. That's a good one. And I think, and the term seasons of what you're in life, I think could be not more. It's so true, because I see, I suppose, in my own life, the season I'm in right now, it is all about growth. It is about the business, and that's where probably 90% of my time is spent. And I know because of that, then in certain other areas, I wouldn't probably deem myself as high performing. Like my social life is neglected because of that, but I'm happy because it's what I want to be doing in the season I'm in life, so that I don't have to be doing that, I suppose, forever. So it's definitely an interesting concept, and I agree with all you're saying there. But what about say you've worked a lot with athletes, and then business owners, say, at the top of their field? Do you see much differences? Like, is there generally much differences between the CEO of or owners of businesses versus, say, the high performance athletes, or do they look and feel quite similar in terms of their mindset and how they sort of operate their lives?
Yeah, the parallels between all of those types of people you've just described is unbelievable. And I guess that is why I'm now moving more from professional sport into this other arena, because I did start to see, well, hang on a second, like it really is a mindset and it's a principle and it's a philosophy. And look, to be honest, the only difference is elite athletes obviously get paid to train. So the
Yeah.
output from just the volume is so much greater. But at a principle, it's nearly exactly the same. And I even drill that down to what I would call like performance. And in the realm of what I'm talking about here, I mean like an athlete competing, or I'm talking about like a CEO or a business owner, pitching for funding, or like a really big AGM. Like that is still performance and intensity, or if they have to do a big speech. So There are definitely parallels 9 times out of 10 across all of those arenas.
Yeah, amazing. And I suppose as a business owner, and we look after a few different businesses with Link Wealth Group. We've got a couple of different entities there. Like, my life is basically work at the moment. Like, I work every single day, but I love it. Like, it doesn't feel like work for me, because maybe like you, it's when you find your passion, it doesn't really feel like that typical 9 to 5 or anything. And I can work kind of unlimited hours. And if I didn't have my wife here, I'd probably work every day, every hour. But I've got got a family and other bits and pieces to look after as well. But I suppose for many business owners that I do work with, work-life balance is can be a bit of a struggle. And how do we then focus on sustaining, I suppose, that high performance without the risk of burning out, which I guess goes for athletes, but I think it might be, can be a little bit different in terms of how they're doing it. But for business owners, and burnout's always a hot topic, and that's not for people at the top. That's for everyone at any level within the business. So how do you feel like you go about that, or are any tips or things to be focusing on in terms of trying to maintain that high energy and sustaining that high performance over longer periods of time?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the day to day and the daily habits that you have in your life that fill you up. And when you start to become self aware and you start to realize what they are, two concepts I talk about a lot are non negotiables and guardrails. And everyone's are a little bit different. So it's figuring out really what works for you. And if you're just too busy or the bandwidth isn't there to do it, that's when, seek support and get that guidance and accountability. But
Mm.
the big 4 to 5 buckets I talk to my clients and work with them on: nutrition. I mean, what other daily habit or daily behavior do we have to do for 3, 4, 5 times a day? So it's a real needle mover when you learn to use it to your advantage. Sleep, the other thing we all do. So, let's tap in, let's optimize it within the context of our lives, whatever that is: children, no children, deadlines, whatever. I believe every single person can optimize for their individual circumstance. Third is movement. It's not a non negotiable, but for a high performer, it is. And if you embed that into your routine, whether that's every morning, whether it's a guardrail and at some point throughout the day, mindset, how you approach things. And I really see a lot of motivated and dedicated people falling into the category of a all or nothing human, and that can really serve them and probably has up until now. But when you are trying to grow the business or climb the ladder or run the team and have time with the family and consider your current self and have that person performing, but you also want to think about future you,
Mm.
it really is about finding a consistent rhythm and looking at progress over this perfection piece, which really can happen in this really high performing individual.
Yeah.
And then the fifth one is recovery, and that's at a macro and a micro level. So sleep is our biggest form of recovery. So I've already kind of ticked that off. But what daily micro habits do we have to regenerate us? And these are things like what I call a brain break. And it's looking at moments in your day, whether you're Pomodoro techniquing, whether you're working to an hour and having a break. Personally, I like to work 90-minute sprints and a 20-minute rest. And that's based off something called your ultradian rhythm, which is an internal rhythm we have within our body. But the trick there is that 20 minutes is stimulant free. It's technology free, it's caffeine free, it's sugar free, and you're really using it to restore and regenerate. So whether that's movement, a bit of a walk outside in nature, whether it's some breath work, if you're working from home or depending on your office, if there's ability to do like a meditation, or one of my favorites is something called your non-sleep deep rest, which it's kind of a form of yoga nidra, but it really is very restorative. So they're the 5 big buckets. And when we tick them, it really helps us elevate, push, but restore. And, then it's a level of working out where you're at. So I've done the work 7 days a week thing before. And in the season that I'm in, I actually can't do that now. But what I like to do is sprint for about 6 to 8 weeks, which involves 6 days of work. And
Mhm.
then I'll back off for a week, whether that's take time off or just deload. and then repeat that. So it's really, there is no exact, which I guess is why it comes down to knowing yourself, being self-aware. And
Yeah.
if you don't have the time, energy, or just bandwidth to do that, get whatever coach or support or trainer or whoever you need around you so you can do that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, and a lot of the work that we do with our clients as well, is if you don't have those habits or you don't have that discipline, which I think of discipline and the ability to do those things, it is kind of like a muscle that you have to build up over time. Like you can't just flick a switch and then expect to, go to the gym, clean up your nutrition, do all the things that you need to start doing, but you need to chip at it over a period of time. And then it is like a muscle and it gets stronger, it gets easier to do, and then it just kind of becomes like a habit, and you don't have to think about it. But if we're then breaking down some of those areas, I might fire off some questions there in terms of, for someone that maybe is struggling low energy, don't feel like they're at peak performance. From a nutrition side of things, so like talk to us a little bit about what is some of the focus, because there is so many different diets and things to try out there. Like there's fasting and the carnivore diet, like there's thousands of them out there. Like how do people try and cut through to the noise with it? And I guess I suppose maybe it is a little bit difficult because everyone's body's going to be different as well. So are there some basic principles or that you try to stick to, or ways of approaching it, or is it really like a one-to-one type thing that you have to address because everyone's body is different and can react different to different nutrition? So how do you tackle that one? Because that's a tough one.
A bit of all of the above, but in terms of giving people some actual like practical tips, there are 100% principles that apply to everyone.
Yeah.
One of them is that first meal of the day needs to be a high protein. And I've strategically said first meal because the whole fasting conversation is a big one. So if you're a breakfast eater, which I am, and a lot of my clients are, purely because they have high energy requirements, it's ensuring it is a high protein meal. So 20 to 30 grams of protein, a few eggs, a yogurt bowl, which has been topped up with some protein powder. It might also just be like a smoothie where you've loaded it with Greek yogurt or protein powder or soy milk or cow's milk. But that protein piece first thing in the day really helps satisfy you. And one thing I talk to a lot of people about is this being proactive, not reactive. And what you're essentially trying to do is train your body and brain to know what it's going to get and to trust it and to then thrive. Because what I see people doing is reacting. I'm low in energy. I'll have said thing, or I'm starving, so I better eat. Where, if and I talk about it from an athlete lens, like they don't just show up day one of preseason and win a grand final the next day. Like there's a whole training and games and all of that. So people need to approach whatever behavior they're trying to embed. Similarly, you need to train your stomach to be comfortable with having it, your brain to trust that you're going to get it, and you're nearly rewiring yourself. The other one is consistency with meals and snacks in terms of timing. I'm not talking about being a robot, but I am talking about guardrails. So most people need to eat every 3 to 5 hours, 3 to 4 if you're more active, 4 to 5 if you're less active. But what people tend to do is quite a big gap from lunch to dinner. And again, that might be a habit that they just have. So they think, oh, well, I can do that. But then dinner's giant, maybe 1 or 2 serves. And then the sugar cravings are spiked and they're rummaging through the cupboard after dinner. Whereas if we actually then added in that strategic snack in the afternoon, again, maybe it's like yogurt, nuts and fruit, maybe it's some crackers with some smoked salmon, maybe it's a snack plate with some cheese, nuts and fruit, and we've had protein, fiber and whole grain carbohydrates to satisfy us, that's going to be improved. And the other thing that's going to happen there is that's more supportive of a better night's sleep. So I really like the point you've made on it is about habit formation. That's always the goal. How do we put that behavior on autopilot? But we need to, we give ourselves 3 days or three weeks when we need to be giving ourselves closer to 10 to 12 weeks. So, the whole habits take 21 days, that's been disproven. The average is about 66 days. So we just, we think we change a lifetime of habits in a couple of days or weeks. When what we need to do is change one thing, really embed it feel the momentum, like have more energy, and then leverage off the back of that.
I think the habits thing. Like for me, I if you ask any of my team members in my business, like I live a really regimented life, and I'm glad you said some of those things on the nutrition, and I'm doing some of those, which I feel good about. Like, I get up really early, go to the gym, 4 a.m. So I do start early, and I come back and I have my shake, and it's always the same stuff in there. So it's like packed full of blueberries, spinach, got the milk in there, the protein powder, and on all those bits and pieces. And then I have my meals like already decked out for the day, kind of eating every sort of 2-3 hours until dinner, and all of that's then planned out. But I'd be curious if you like the way I do that for myself is say then every Sunday, like myself and my wife, we prep the lunch and dinner and eat the same lunch and dinner then Monday to Friday. And the reason why I suppose we do that is I don't want to have to think about any of it, because if there's too many barriers between the food that we're going to be eating and the preparation of it, it kind of like it makes it a lot harder to stick to. So that's something that we've been doing. So the lunch and dinner every Monday to Friday is just basically set. Don't have to think about it, and like you said, kind of having those same snacks in between. So it sounds like I'm kind of doing some of the right things there, which I'm happy to hear. But would you say nutrition though, like if you can't get that part of it right, like it's the fuel that you're putting into your body. I always say like a healthy body is a healthy mind, and then if you're sort of falling down in the nutrition part of it, like I dare say it's incredibly difficult to be high performing, because it's the fuel. So I don't think you can neglect it, can you? Like I couldn't see, if you want to be at that level, how you can be putting crap into your body and then be expecting to perform at the high level. Have you ever seen any high performance where nutrition is not a factor?
No, and even if, everyone, I should say, there are kind of the exceptions to the rule, but across the board, even the exceptions to the rule, when they put better behaviors in place around what they're putting into their body, it helps them go longer. And where I see it specifically, I guess, with athletes is maybe when they start getting towards the end of their career and they start
Mm.
thinking, have I optimized everything? Is there more opportunity to dial in? And yeah, to your point, in terms of if people are listening, and I appreciate there's probably a mixture of people doing a lot of things quite well, which typically is what I like to call an overachiever. They're pretty dialed in. They're looking at that kind of marginal gains piece. But if there's people listening and feeling like we're out of touch, or like, oh, it's easy for them to say, my thing to you is start somewhere. And if you need to know where to start with your sleep or your nutrition. Again, these are the two things we have to do every day, and
Yeah.
hydration. So they're a really good place to start. Pick the one that feels like the path of least resistance. I fundamentally believe to win the day, you need to win the night. So start with a wind down routine, start with some good sleep hygiene practices. Start there, because you have to sleep. So you might as well start to optimize that. Get rid of the doom
Mm.
scrolling, journal to get the thoughts out of your head. And then when it comes to your nutrition, start with that high protein meal. And I like what you've said. The other thing I didn't mention is every meal should have something I call all the elements: protein, carbs, colors, healthy fats. When you get that blend, it tastes good, it fills you up, it satisfies you, and it's very balanced.
Yeah.
Um, but again, if it's in nutrition, if you can start in the morning, a lot of people, we're being reacting. What we're doing in the afternoon or evening is a byproduct of what we have or haven't done in the morning. So if you're focusing on your nutrition, look at your first half of the day, and it will help you take care of the back end of the day.
Yeah, amazing. And then what about sleep? Do you have a guideline in terms of sleep? Or, I know everyone's different, and you hear some people operating off, 4 and 5 hours, and I won't lie, sometimes like I'll get up, 3 a.m. and because I just got so much to get through, but I know that's not sustainable as well. Like I know that's not right for my body, but I typically sort of hover around about 7 hours most nights. Thoughts there, and guidelines around, is there a target? Everyone's body's going to be different there, but do you have a general thought on the sleep?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's one of the best things that someone can do is go to bed at a consistent time,
Yeah.
within, say, about 30 to 60 minutes. That, regardless of life, children, everything else, has been shown to have really beneficial effects. And this is again where we balance like short term us performing now and future us and the longevity piece and quality of life into the back end, which, you're working with people on their wealth, and we're building that now because we want to live an amazing life for all of our years. So that's the
Yeah.
first piece. The second thing is to implement a wind down routine, 100%. Like, start preparing your body and your brain to sleep, and start removing the screens and the lights. Have some sort of relaxation practice. The number one thing inhibiting us from good sleep is our inability to switch off our thoughts. So the scrolling or all of that, that's really, really inhibiting that. And then I guess in terms of knowing yourself, yeah, I need 7 to 8 hours. My partner needs 6 to 7. And that's just
Yeah.
something. And he tries to keep me awake. And I'm like, I'm not going to be a nice person
I like it.
tomorrow if I don't go to bed now. So
Yeah.
it really comes back to this finding a way to know yourself and what you need. But look, around this 7 to 8 hours, there are the very few people that can kind of survive short term on less sleep. But we're just starting to see again, like, the thing with sleep, and I touched on it, but I didn't go into it, around the recovery piece. This is where the buildup of debris in our brain across the day is cleared. And, we have a specific type of sleep architecture. We have cycles we go through. There's not really a way to hack it. Like, I had someone say, well, can I sleep less but get the same REM or deep sleep? And like, very challenging. Like,
Mm-mm.
there are some ways to optimize, but you can't really skip it because it's an internal set process we go through with the 4 stages.
Yeah.
So my big thing there is try to be as consistent as possible,
Yeah.
Monday to Sunday. Have that wind down routine and do your best to protect the time. And if there is a season of less sleep because you've got to do the things, great, but know your limit. Like, for me, I know more than 2 days of poor sleep and it's starting to show in every way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the big one there is the routine, like you said, is actually the consistency. But if I could see if someone was, going to sleep at different hours every day and getting up different hours, like that sounds to me like a recipe for disaster. And like I was saying with my food, which is so regimented and planned out, sleep is always the same, like always in bed, sleeping by probably latest 9:30 and then up at 4. And my body's just totally used to it. And I think that's why it works. I think the big one there is, you got to find what it is for you. And like my business partner, he's normally up later, but then gets up later, and that's his routine. So you just got to figure it out, what it is for you. With the movement part, I suppose that, we're looking at getting out, doing some exercise, but that doesn't need to be like a heavy gym session every morning, does it? Like, it's as little as a walk and things like that, or do you actually encourage and suggest like there should be some weight bearing exercise in there?
If they're starting from absolute scratch, definitely get out, walk, get movement, start to have movement as a habit in your life. If you're
Yeah.
really looking to dial in, and again, where are you at in your journey? 100% you should be doing resistance training, and 100% we want to be working at different intensities from a cardio point of view. So yeah, I really love the conversation that's happening around the benefits of resistance training at the moment for men and women, and in particular women as they
Yes.
age. As we age, we decline in muscle mass. It's a natural process. It's called sarcopenia, which by pulsing your protein and doing the resistance training, we're overriding that. But women in particular, at the perimenopausal and menopausal phase, rapid decline compared to men. So the more we can do resistance training and weights in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, that will really help optimize the muscle mass that we're all carrying from that longevity piece. But the other really interesting piece is, yes, when we exercise, we release endorphins, which make us feel good. But with resistance training, there's a lot of these other, molecules that are released, things called myokines. And again, from this brain protective side of things. So yeah, if you're not going to the gym, start walking. But if you want to dial in, you should definitely be looking to lift weights a few times a week.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And before I touch on the mindset one, which is a really interesting one, what are your thoughts on cold showers and cold exposure? Do you have any? I was doing it for, I'd say, 4 or 5 months, and I won't lie, I did feel better. yes, stop doing it. Maybe I don't know. I just kind of I think it was over the Christmas break, kind of got out of the habit of it, and then haven't really picked it up. But it was interesting because I've seen a lot of things online around the benefits of it, but then on the opposite side of it, people talking that it can actually be quite dangerous to do as well. But I definitely noticed, and I think for me it was actually more of just a mental test of doing it. That's the fun part I felt about doing it at 4 a.m. in winter, and it was freezing, and I hopped in a cold shower. My wife would always look at me and be like, what are you doing? And it was more of a mental test, I think it was for me, and just that ability that pain barrier to go through it. Have you done any sort of work around that cold exposure and cold plunging or anything?
Yeah, it's really getting its like heyday at the moment, and I
Yeah.
see a lot of people testing it and trialing it. Look, I'm
Mm,
definitely all for it. I am an advocate of it, but I am an advocate for it in terms of where it sits in the hierarchy. And if you're not sleeping properly, if you're not eating properly, if you're not moving, a cold shower or a cold plunge, like it just it in terms of that priority. But
mm.
yeah, the research around like mood, focus, the hormone release, the stimulation, even the immune benefits, there is definitely a lot of research out, and I think there's going to be even more coming out. But I attended an event the other week, and there was like I would say leading women's health researcher in the world, and she mentioned that for women, from getting a benefit, we're only looking at around that 15 to 16 degrees, whereas for men, we're looking at going, much colder, around that 8 degrees. So look, place and space, but if you're not doing the fundamentals, the little sprinkles on top, like the cold showers and the supplements, are not overriding
Yeah,
fundamentally.
it's not
No,
gonna change everything. No, you
look,
can't. No, and that's the thing I think people need to understand is like doing one thing won't fix the whole system or issue. You've got to be doing consistently in each of those areas to get that high performance, which is what we're talking about. But maybe finishing in the last part of the chat here then about mindset and like that. When I think about mindset, you can go in a lot of different ways around that, and probably of all of them, I think that, out of my opinion, would be that's probably the hardest one maybe to focus on because nutrition, you can have a coach, that's fine. Movement, going to the gym, sleep, maybe it is a little bit different there, but the mindset one, that can be that can be a real deal breaker if you can't get the mindset right. I think nearly everything can kind of fall apart if you do. You might stay on the straight and narrow for a couple of months there, but if you don't have that mindset, you don't develop the habits, it kind of all falls down there. So how do you go about then trying to develop that more peak performance and high performance mindset from someone that maybe hasn't been like that, or don't feel like they have a great mindset, or have never felt that way in their life before?
yeah, and the work I do in this space kind of nearly organically happens through targeting these other areas. But a lot of it is that identity piece and how they see themselves, that internal dialogue, how they talk to themselves, the limiting beliefs that they maybe established around this space, and understanding what they are, and then helping them to first of all understand that, and then over time rewire that.
Mm,
When we're looking at, if I think of the corporates, the execs, the business owners who are excelling in their career but haven't got the health piece right, it's
mm,
helping them see the parallels. And you know there's so much crossover between like building health and wealth, and the strategies and like diversification, which you would talk about, and compounding it's literally exactly the same. Every single piece of the puzzle is laid, and the more we can get it to fit together and compound over time, the better it will become. So there's a lot of that. And as I said, to be honest, the majority of clients I would see would sit into a category I would call an all or nothing human, or a ticking time bomb. And the all or nothing human, like I said, they're successful in most areas, but they haven't just found this consistent rhythm that's going to support them for the rest of their life. Or the ticking time bomb's more like surface level, things look good, but one more thing that goes wrong and it's going to be pushing them onto the brink of burnout. So with them, it's finding that first domino. So in a lot of the instances, it's this like progress over perfection outlook, and it is rewiring that identity and finding that piece of the health journey that really resonates with them, and helping them tap into that and helping them see how they've done it in other areas of their life. That's generally how it fits into the mix of things.
Yeah, no, interesting. And I think you sort of touched a bit on it then. So, a bit of a breakdown of each of the profiles, so the high performance profiles, so people can kind of understand maybe where they fit in relation to that and where they can start making some changes. Can you give a bit of insight there?
Yeah, it's I've actually put together a quiz, because stepping back and looking at like what are the commonalities in the sports arena, business, entrepreneurship, and as I said, there are traits and principles. So the overachiever is the really dialed in operator. They're ticking most of the things this is probably you. I'm sure if you did the quiz, you would come out here,
I'll do it straight after this.
you're moving, you're eating well, you're probably on top of your hydration, your sleep's consistent. So ticking those boxes. And then they're all about the marginal gains. Well, what is my opportunity? Because being a high performing human, you understand there is growth opportunities regardless of where you're at. So what are they? And that might be, what can I do now that's going to make me 1% better? Or what can I tweak that's helping future me be 1% better? That would be the minority of people, if I'm honest. The majority of people sit into the all or nothing category. And I guess, like I said, the through line there is they just like turn it on and get the things done. I'll just get in and get it done. And that's really served them in most areas of their life. But then they start to realize that they don't have a rhythm, and it really requires a lot of effort and willpower and dedication. And this is where it's like, well, hey, there is actually an easier way, a path of least resistance. It's about finding consistency, which I can imagine for a lot of people is an eye roll. But what I don't mean there is necessarily being a robot, but finding those non-negotiables and guardrails just to like put four walls around their life and help them find that rhythm for themselves. That's the majority of people, definitely. And then the ticking time bomb, yeah, like I said, surface level, they seem to have it all together. But, it's the duck under the water, cruising along, and then the feet underneath. And for this person, they might be I'm just going to do an ice bath, but I'm not actually going to sleep better, or I'm not actually going to eat better. I'm just going to Uber Eats coffees till 4 p.m. and whatever else. And that person really needs to find the first most important domino that they can push to build momentum, and then leverage the rest of their habits off that. So they're the three. But yeah, do the high performance profile quiz. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, or you can find it on any of my kind of platforms and websites and things, and let me know where you come out at.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, Jess. And I suppose in terms of then wrapping all of it up, I would just want to put in there exactly where everyone can find you. But I think in terms of like what we're doing in the financial advice space, like we are planning out with our clients, how to build their wealth, live their best life. And that's setting out 10, 20, 30-year plans. That could be for themselves, their kids, grandkids. But ultimately, if you can't actually nail and do all of these things, kind of it's all really not, what are you doing it for in the end? Because if you're not actually, optimizing your nutrition, your exercise, sleep and your mindset, like you probably may not be around in 20 or 30 years time to ultimately get there. So I think there's so much crossover in there. It's really not funny, because again, we're doing these plans so that when we're in our 50s and 60s, we can have that life. But if you're not looking after yourself along the journey, you're never going to get there. Or maybe if you get there, you're probably not going to be in a state or a position where you can actually enjoy it. So I think there's so much to take away from this. And before we then close out, so where can everyone then find you in terms of the website? You've got the podcast. Were there any other bits and pieces you want to mention?
Yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram, very active on both of them. But the website, and yes, www.jessicaspendlove.com, or stay at the top. And yeah, the thing I just wanted to say, what you've just mentioned, there's there's a saying that goes, a healthy man wants 1,000 things and an unhealthy man wants one. And for me, I really feel my expertise sits at the intersection of health, longevity, and performance, and finding a way to blend all three of them is really, like, one doesn't always consider the other. But in 2024, we've got the skills, we've got the access, we've got the people to be able to do all of that. And to your point, yeah, we're putting the foundations in place to have a great retirement, or whatever it is. So like, let's not neglect ourselves, the most important asset, so we actually are able to do that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and I always preach. All of the high performing people I've ever met, they never do everything themselves as well. Like they've always got a team of professionals around them. I call it the dream team, and they're so focused and good at doing what they're doing, but they outsource a lot of different things, and that's like exactly where you'd be stepping in from that respect, because you're working with a lot of busy people that don't have time to think about their nutrition or what they need to be doing and all of these aspects. So I dare say you should be a part of that dream team in terms of being able to optimize one's life. So that's been amazing, Jess. And guys, we're going to wrap it up today, and appreciate everyone that is listening. And of course, if you are getting some value out of it, 5 stars on Spotify and Apple definitely helps us out a lot. Check out the show notes. We'll put everything in there in relation to Jess's stuff if you want to track her down. But of course, jump on her website, Instagram, etc. And of course, if you want to reach out and maybe get a bit more insight into what Jess is doing, please do so. So as always, guys, if you do want to chat about your personal situation as well, feel free to go through it at our website, and you can book in and actually chat with one of the advisors. But Jess, really appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast, and I dare say we're going to have to do another one of these podcasts, because I've got a lot more questions that I could be asking you.
Look forward to the next one, and thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jess.